Hello and welcome back to the NFL Week 9 preview. We will be going over the top matchups for running back and wide receiver 1. We're going to go over the top 5 of both. I am your host, Tyler, and at FlatTyler83 on X and on your DFS sites. Now let's get into it. Let's break it down. What you're seeing here is our website, but we do have it available in app form as well through iOS and Android app stores. Just download Lionstar DFS. It'll pop right up. Also, if you've never tried us out before, you can get a free 7-day trial. So try it out. Let's go. Let's check up on our matchups for this week. All right, so we do have a 13-game slate. It'll be 12 on Draftkings with no late game there. So once again, another big slate and an interesting slate as well, as we have multiple high-scoring games to go over this week and dig into. All right, starting with RB1, Josh Jacobs. Now, this one is super surprising. The Detroit Lions, 31st versus RB over the last 5 weeks on our team defense tool. Now, once again, our team defense tool isn't an adjusted metric similar to DVOA. So, what big thing happened with the Lions? They lost Aiden Hutchinson, and now the RB spot has been giving it up a little bit. If we look at the matchup tool, we can check what teams have actually done versus the Lions. Pollard, 20 for 294 or for 94 yards, and then he added 3 receptions for 23 yards. Before that, you had sorry, I went to the wrong one here. Before that, you had Aaron Jones versus Detroit. 14 carries, 93 yards, 3 receptions, 23 yards, and a tutty. So running backs have got over a little bit on Detroit over those last 2 games. Also, without Aiden Hutchinson, things may be changing as far as that front on Detroit on a run defense standpoint. So I think it's an interesting play having Jacobs there. We know that game is going to be high scoring. However, we do have to wait and see if Jordan Love is going to play. At this time, he is still questionable. He had that groin injury that left the game last week. So hopefully he plays. And if he does, this game is super enticing to stack. And Josh Jacobs probably goes under own. I would assume most of the field has not really caught up to the Lions being maybe not that great of a run D without Hutchinson. Next, we got Chuba Hubbard versus the Saints. Hopefully Andy Dalton is back here. If Andy Dalton is back, wheels up for Hubbard again. He has crushed with Andy Dalton there. Not so much without Andy Dalton. Without Andy Dalton, 15 for 56, adding 15 yards receiving, 10 for 64, 12 yards receiving, and then 14 yards. So what I take from this is I am fully on board if Andy Dalton is there. If he is not there and it is Bryce, I'm going to have some exposure, but I'm not going super hard. I just don't think it's the slam dunk spot it is if it's not Andy Dalton. So next, we got Kyren Williams, 8,900 versus the Seahawks. Seahawks have been giving it up, and Kyren has been literally as automatic as you can guess. He's just been touchdown after touchdown, and you gotta like his floor. You gotta like what his median projection is. And then we know there's a ceiling because there's obviously multiple touchdown opportunities. He had 3 versus San Francisco. His workload is huge, and that is going to change. And now that they are healthy again, they have Puka, they got Kupp. This offense is rolling. Very interested in Kyren. And absolutely interested in taking Kyren in either Kupp or Puka as a little stack for this game. 48.5 total. The Seahawks have plenty of guys that you could want on the way back. So nice little game stack possibility with that game using Kyren. Next, we got Javonte Williams versus the Ravens. Now, this is a weird one. I was shocked to see this one. Especially, I go over to the matchup tool and try and, see what the Ravens have allowed. All right, Baltimore Ravens are 8th on our matchup tool. Chubb didn't do much. White did, but White did it through the air. There's also multiple other running backs that did well in the, through the air versus the Ravens. So what did he do? 6 for 71, 2 touchdowns through the air, 40 yards rushing. So he had himself a day. And I think that's a big reason why he's popping. Then outside of that, Chubb did nothing. Eckler did nothing. This was Brian Robinson out. Moss didn't do much, but Chase Brown did okay. And then Cook did nothing. So I think this is a very, very interesting one to pop up. And I think partially is popping up because teams just don't really have an opportunity to run versus the Ravens. But if you look at the metrics, we're showing a big bump up in targets, big bump up in receptions, huge jump up in receiving yards, and a huge jump up in reception TDs. I think that is largely due to that Tampa Bay game, which may be throwing off the adjusted metrics a little bit. So I don't totally buy into Javonte being in a great spot here. Because if you look at as far as a rush D, they've been solid. It's less yards. More attempts, but less yards. So your yards per carry average has been better than average, what this is saying against the Ravens. But they can do work in the passing game. So maybe Javonte Williams or Jaleel McLaughlin have some upside through the passing game versus the Ravens. Next, we got Saquon Barkley. Dude has just been electric and just keeps dominating game in and game out. Got a big side with rushing yards and touchdowns. I'm definitely down for some Saquon this week. Next, let's go over to wide receiver 1. We got a CeeDee Lamb coming in at the top spot. Falcons 32nd versus the Cowboys. CeeDee coming off a 14 and a 17 target game. They are finally back to just hyper targeting CeeDee Lamb, and I think they're going to have to once again versus the Falcons. Wheels up for CeeDee. I will definitely be riding him a little bit. 52.5 game total. And this is one of those spots where if the Cowboys can come out and get to a little bit of a lead, the Falcons have shown that they can be pushed. They would rather, run and pass, have a very good mixtures of those. But if a team comes out, hits them in the mouth, they can be pushed to really sling it like we have seen versus Tampa Bay with that one game that just went absolutely nuts. So very interested in some pieces of this game, especially CeeDee taking our top wide receiver matchup here. Next, we got Courtland Sutton versus the Ravens. We've been picking on the Ravens week in and week out for their secondary, and I think this spot is more of the same. Bo Nix has looked solid. Courtland Sutton, 8 receptions, 11 targets, 100 yards last week. He's regularly the highest targeted guy on the Broncos. Definitely some interest here. Bo Nix has played really solidly, and they have let him have a little more leash, so there is some interest here. Likely the Broncos are going to have to throw more than they have all season in this matchup. Very likely the Ravens are up early, and Broncos are needing to come back here. Next, we got DJ Moore, 30th versus the wide receiver 1 as the Arizona Diamondbacks. This is another game that could be pretty interesting. Bears play at a fast pace, and you could see this game getting a little wild. The issue is DJ Moore and Caleb just have not been on the same page. 2 for 27 last week, 4 for 20 the week before, 5 for 105 and 2 touchdowns versus Carolina, but that's literally the only usable week he's had all season. I think there's bigger games to come. Maybe this one is it versus Arizona, who is allowing 162 receiving yards per game with 1 touchdown per game to the wide receivers, ranked 22nd in fantasy scoring. Definitely interested with some DJ Moore there. Next, we got Romeo Doubs versus the Lions. We covered the Lions defense a little bit ago. This is absolutely a spot I don't mind going back to. The Lions versus wide receivers has been a very vulnerable spot. Over the last 4 games, 216 yards per game, 0.5 touchdowns per game, opponent rank of 27. I'm definitely down for some Doubs or Wicks, Reed, Watson. The issue with these Green Bay pass catchers is you never know which one from week to week it's going to be. Doubs is kind of the WR1 because he runs the most snaps, runs the most routes, plays the most snaps, but he's like 3rd on the target list behind Reed and Wicks. But don't mind some Doubs. He is the safer option, just doesn't have the ceiling as some of the other Packers receivers. Chris Olave, 28th versus wide receiver 1 is the Carolina Panthers. Olave has had a little bit of a disappointing season. There's a very good chance that Derek Carr is back this week, and he's in a good matchup now. Carolina allowing 150 yards per game to the receiver, 20th ranked, 1.1 touchdowns per game. The other thing here is that teams haven't had to throw against Carolina. They can just continually to run because Carolina is down all game, every single game. So in a spot where there could actually be more throwing, the Saints have been really bad lately, beat up by injuries and just, getting ran over. I think Olave is pretty interesting, and this is a very nice bounce-packed, get-right spot for him. With no Rashid Shaheed and Derek Carr back, Olave should get targeted a ton. I'm very interested in this spot versus the Panthers. And this is another game where a little mini stack definitely has some interest. Now, I just want to talk about Michael Pittman real quick. So a bonus one. This is the 6th wide receiver we're going over, but the big news here is that Joe Flacco is taking over at quarterback for the Colts. So wheels up for those pass catchers for the Colts. Both Downs and Pittman are going to start looking very, very interesting. And I bet Pittman and Downs are super high owned this week at 5,800. And I don't know what Downs is, but I'm sure he's pretty cheap as well. Both of these guys are going to look super enticing this week versus Vikings, who've been giving up 211 receiving yards per game to the wide receiver and 2.5 touchdowns per game. This Colt spot, if they are low owned, is an absolute smash spot. Doubt they'll be low owned, but extremely interested as the week goes on to look at these ownership numbers and where we're going with guys like Michael Pittman. That will do it for us today, guys. Hope you enjoyed this version of the Week 9 Top Matchup Tool. Please comment, like, subscribe to our channel, do all that stuff. We'll be back more this week with more DFS and prop betting content. Peace!